Well, it has happened again. A Trump has fallen for a disinformation campaign aimed at a Democratic candidate. It's almost like someone hasn't read the Mueller report. Look, here it is. Following Kamala Harris's breakout performance at the Democratic debate, Donald Trump Jr. retweeted and later deleted this tweet from a conservative commentator who claimed Harris is not, quote, American black. Harris has been the subject of growing social media attacks focused on her ethnic background and her parents' immigrant status, dating back to the launch of her campaign in January. It's sort of like birtherism, the racist meme promoted for years by Donald Jr.'s dad, meets Russiagate. But this time, the Democrats were ready. After Jr.'s retweet, practically every 2020 candidate took to Twitter to condemn the attacks against Harris. And joining me now is Jason Johnson of The Root, Democratic strategist Aisha Moody-Mills, Elie Mystal of AboveTheLaw.com, and back with me, Malcolm Nance, MSNBC contributor and author extraordinaire. All right, let me go to you first on this, Jason, because the attacks on Kamala Harris, these are not new. The birther attacks on her actually started in January when she launched, and it was immediate, and it was bot-driven, and it was intense. Bringing it back, what does that tell you about what we can look forward to in 2020, whether or not she's the nominee?
Well, it means that a massive disinformation campaign is going to be spread online, and they hope it trickles down into reality. And Joy, this is the important thing to understand, because birtherism was about white people. Right? Birtherism was about Barack Obama's not really from here, white people in the Midwest don't vote for him. This stuff about Harris, about her status, about her blackness, that's about black people. This is about a sophisticated attempt to get black people to not want to support Senator Harris. Now, here's the thing. If you don't like Senator Harris, if you don't like her criminal justice background, if you don't like her hair, whatever, you have a right to not like someone. But to dislike a candidate because you're falling for a racist disinformation campaign where we're having discussions about authentic blackness, that's a problem. I don't think anyone cared whether she was black or half Indian when they were busing her in the 1960s. So that's what we need to understand about this. This is an attempt to divide the black community and attack a black candidate, not on policy reasons, but on xenophobia and racism.
Yeah, I mean, and here's the Harris campaign statement for you, Aisha. This is the same type of racist attacks used to attack Barack Obama. It didn't work then, and it won't work now. That was Lily Adams, the campaign spokesman. Cory Booker was one of the many people who jumped in her defense. Really, everyone. I saw a Jay Inslee tweet. Everybody jumped in for the most part. Kamala Harris doesn't have SH star T to prove. So he even was cussing. So, I mean, and the thing is that's good about this, Aisha, is that it does seem that this time Democrats are at least prepared, right? It's not going to take them off guard. And that the solidarity of the other candidates was immediate and kicked in. But the fact that, to Jason's point, this time the birtherism is directed at black people, much like the IRA attacks that were in the Mueller report, right? The first half of the Mueller report is that what Russia did was try to go after black voters to try to turn them away from Hillary Clinton. The fact that that thing is happening, and this time it's domestic, what do you make of it?
Well, I think that they're very clear about the strategy that, frankly, Republicans have used since the beginning of time, which is divide and conquer on race. I am really I'm really thankful, one, Joy, that you're having this conversation, because it really is at its core about the birtherism is really about this anti-immigrant sentiment that we all need to be paying attention to. So surely it's about race and trying to divide the black community, but what's at the core of it? What is at the core is trying to define what American is. And to say that someone who, even though they're black and have experienced life in America, were born here, isn't American enough, is where this conversation is really going. And I think that for all of those who are watching and who are really curious, what this is about, is that this is a way that I believe that Republicans are trying to move an anti-immigrant conversation and do it in a way that they think they're slick, and to try to bring black people now into that, which is just completely wrong. And I don't think that, we should fall for it, and everyone who's watching should really pay attention and not be swayed by it.
Yeah, I want to really get Malcolm back in here, because Malcolm has been attacked by this sort of blood and soil, this sort of black blood and soil thing that is happening online, where it's sort of moving, sort of trying to be tricky about moving black people toward the Donald Trump position on immigration, and using Kamala Harris as a pivot to try to say, no, your enemy is immigrants, and then look at her parents are immigrants, she's not even really black, she's trying to take away from slave descendants that are American, that are, where the slave ship landed is basically what makes you black, or makes you black enough. Here is the tweet again, and this is what it said. Kamala Harris is implying she descended from American black slaves, something she's never said. Ali Alexander, a member of a right-wing constellation of media personalities wrote on Twitter, she's not. She comes from Jamaican slave owners. That's fine. She's not an American black, period. First of all, black Jamaicans were there in Jamaica because they were enslaved. The slave ship dropped them off in Jamaica. Let's just be clear. But anyway, Malcolm, Nance, your thoughts.
You know, first off, let me push your, this is mind-boggling. Let me push your timeline back a little bit.
I can't believe we have to do this. I can't believe we have to do this, but go on.
I want to push your timeline back a little bit. We first saw, there's a small group of black cybersecurity specialists and me, started seeing these birther attacks on Kamala Harris last September when she launched her presidential bid. And that's where this whole, are you a real descendant of an African-American family or an African-American slave started popping up. It dipped until about January. You did a segment on your show, and then we saw this explosion of real people. They're not all bots. They are real people. They're trolls who are this small fractional fringe group led by a former black conservative, and that was picked up quickly by other conservatives. And then we started seeing the automated, non-organic cyber amplification of their message. And then when the discussion about reparations came out, their entire argument is crazy. The argument is when you were picked up on that slave ship from Western Africa, and if you were dropped off in Curacao or in Dominica or Bahamas or Jamaica, then you are less of a black than a slave who was dropped off in Charleston, South Carolina. It is a horrible form of black racism that has now been harnessed to be a voter suppression tool, because their entire campaign is don't vote for anyone who is not dropped off in Charleston, South Carolina in the 17th century. So this whole thing is now being amplified by foreign powers and by the right wing and Donald Trump Jr.
Yeah, it's crazy to me in a sense that we have to have a conversation that all enslaved people who in the Western Hemisphere all emanated from the continent of Africa, whether you were dropped off in Trinidad or dropped off in Jamaica or dropped off in Charleston. This seems like an elementary, my dear Watson, but apparently we have to have this conversation. Elie Mystal, Joe Biden, I want to read his tweet, and he's been running a lot on his connection to President Obama, rightly so. He jumped in and said the same forces of hatred rooted in birtherism that questioned Barack Obama's American citizenship and even his racial identity are now being used against Senator Kamala Harris. It's disgusting. We have to call it out where we see it. Racism has no place in America. That was Joe Biden. I want to play the precursor because if people are saying, well, it's just maybe organic and maybe, black people just really question Kamala Harris. I don't know, because there's a trigger that usually has to do with Trump when these trolls emerge. Here's Donald Trump on Saturday talking about Kamala Harris's debate performance.
I think she was given too much credit for what she did. It wasn't that outstanding. And I think probably he was hit harder than he should have been hit.
So she's given too much credit. We're giving the black lady too much credit, Elie.
Black people always getting something that they don't deserve, right? Like that's the white thing that they're doing. There's obviously, look, as everybody's mother used to say, if they're shooting at you, that means you're doing something right? Donald Trump Jr. talking about whether or not Kamala Harris is black enough is like me talking about whether or not Idris Elba is hitting the gym hard enough. It's dumb. It's ridiculous. Obviously, look, there's always going to be 5 to 10 to 12% of African Americans who have their vote colonized by the Republicans or by Russia. And that's just, look, you can't free everybody. So that's just going to be a thing that happens, and we have to try hard not to overreact to your black Republican friend telling you that Kamala Harris isn't black enough. What I think, though, that is important, that this is part of people like Trump, people like Don Jr., people like Republicans trying to control the narrative of the Democratic debate, which I am not here for. If you're a Republican and you want to be interested in the Democratic Party, come on down. If you saw the debates this week, we got food coming hot off the grill. We are ready to welcome you. But what you're not going to do is show up at our house and tell us, I was really hoping you would make some quiche. All right? That's not what we got. We got burgers, we got veggie dogs, we got health care. If you want borscht, you're going to have to go with the other guys.
can't even say anything else after that. What else can I say but thank you? we don't have quiche. We don't. I mean, I know that's what you wanted.
Like, come, if you want to share in our bounty, you can share. But don't be a trifling guest.
Make your own quiche and bring it in a Tupperware if you wanted that. Share it with everyone. Thank you, Jason Johnson, Malcolm Nance, Aisha, and Elie. With quiche. We'll be back in our next hour. He's in a Tupperware. Coming up, Congressman